And I love getting that message. Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. Looks like we're good to go, which is great. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Runner's High, presented by Canada Running Series. Runner's High is a collection of informal conversations with key and influential members of the world and the business of running. My name is Kate Van Buskirk, and for another week, I am so pleased to be your host for today's discussion. Just a reminder that, as always, Runner's High is interactive, so you can feel free to leave those questions or comments in the comment section on the Canada Running Series Facebook page, and we will leave some time at the end to get to those. So the virtual race period for the Under Armour Spring Run-Off opens tomorrow, April 1st. Can't believe it's already April, but there is still time to head to CanadaRunningseries.com and register for the 8K, the 5K, or the kids' virtual races and get some great swag from Under Armour, including a discount to UA.com, as well as some swag from Noon and from Lara Bar. And today we're joined by three guests to share more about the Under Armour Spring Run-Off and the connection to its charity partner, the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. So the Spring Run-Off was established back in 1978, and I think it's definitely not an understatement to say that this event is steeped in tradition. Over the decades, it has welcomed Olympians, world champions, dedicated recreational runners, and kids of all ages to Toronto's beautiful High Park as the unofficial kickoff to the spring racing season. And just on a personal note, I have to say that as someone who has run the 8K several times and also trains in High Park regularly, there is little that can truly prepare you for those hills. This is definitely one of the most challenging courses out there. But you know, as they say, the tougher the course, the greater the rewards. And I will attest to the fact that nothing feels better than crossing that finish line at the top of Spring Hill Road at the end of that 8K. So sadly, of course, we won't be holding this race in person this year, but this leaves you all free to design your own courses wherever you are across the city or the country. You can make them as challenging or as easy as you would like. And our first guest today, who will share more about the exciting history of the Spring Run-Off, is Mr. Alan Brookes, race director at Canada Running Series and the race director of the Spring Run-Off, more specifically, since 1986. Hi, Alan.
Hi. Great to see you, Kate and Candace and Keith. Great to be here. And I'm looking forward to hearing some tales, maybe from some of our viewers today, on their best and their absolute worst experiences at the Under Armour Spring Run-Off. As you said, it's been going since 1978, and it's always been that sort of opening day for running in the spring. Dave Reed, who's been a part of it since year one, your coach, I think described it as the first rite of spring. And so it's been about tradition, you mentioned, but also about resiliency and facing challenges, whether it's the hills. But I have to say, even though you're making something about the hills, Kate, I think the weather's a close rival for the biggest challenge. And it's been that symbol of just what Canadians can do to get through a Canadian winter, to have trained and to be ready to take on the elements, take on the hills in really Toronto's most beautiful scenic park. We've seen some great battles, and there's some great stories. Just a couple. I remember in 1999, there were three young guys, Sammy Kipketer, Albert Chip Karui, and Simon Chimoiwo, juniors. They were like 18 years old. An agent sent them over to us to after the World Cross Country. They competed in the junior race. Sammy actually went on to set a world record for 5K on the road, running 13 minutes, and after that, under 13 minutes. But they were these young boys in high school in Kenya, and they came over. They'd never been outside of their country before. They'd done the World Cross. They came, we put them in a hotel, but there weren't any cooking facilities there. So our great friend Dave Reed invited them over to his house every day, and they cooked ugali. And one day they wanted to make tea because, of course, all our Kenyan athletes love tea. And they took Dave's electric kettle and they put it on top of the burner on the stove. And after a while, there's this awful smell, and Dave realized, and the whole bottom of the kettle had melted onto the burner. And I think it took Dave weeks to chip it off. But, you know, they'd never seen an electric kettle. Dave took them to the mall after the race on Sunday, and they bought these boom boxes for their mothers. And Sammy was there buying his and buying a whole pile of batteries as well. And Dave said, you know, it's got a plug-in. What are you doing with buying all these batteries? And Sammy said, well, we have electricity at the training camp, but we don't have electricity at home. So for it to work for my mom, I have to get the batteries. And finally on that Sunday, it snowed, and Dave had them out playing street hockey and a snowball fight. So some wonderful, wonderful stories. And I think great resilience. One final thing before we get on to our other very important guest. I think the Spring Run-Off is Toronto's oldest continuously held road race, and we'd like to think, with the support of our community doing the virtual race last year and this year, it will continue as continuously held. Many of the races that started in the late 1970s and 80s, they're all gone now. And we have to ask, you know, why the Spring Run-Off has survived, has thrived. I think it's because of the unique venue, the great challenge, the tradition of the piper taking people piping people to the start line, maple syrup and the pancake breakfast, fresh Canadian springtime maple syrup, the pancake breakfast for High Park Nature Center after. All of those things, the tradition has continued. But I think it's also about this resilience and adaptation. And I think, Kate, sitting here, we all know today how all of us across Canada, around the world, have had to be resilient. We've had to be flexible and adapt this last year. The Spring Run-Off originally was just an 8K. But then in 2003, we added a 5K. In 2016, by popular demand, we added Kill the Hill. And there's that famous last hill that you remember so beautifully, 600 meters up to the finish line. We have separate timing mats so that there's a race within a race, and you can compare yourself with the elites and see how fast you can get up that last hill. And we crown a king and queen of the hill at the awards ceremony. We added a kids race too. So I think the most important thing, though, and it maybe segues into our other part of the show, is the sponsorship partnership we had with Harry Rosen from 2006 to 2015 brought Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation to the table, and it built on the amazing sport tradition of Sammy and his kettle and running 13 minutes for 5K. It built on that tradition, and it built out the more modern appeal of the race as an important community event that made a massively important contribution to the community. And I always remember in 2010, we still have photos, Mark Daly, the voice of Toronto, and the late Jack Layton were both out. And of course, in those years, the first years of Harry's partnership and the partnership with Princess Margaret, the focus was on prostate cancer. And sadly, we lost both Mark and Jack to that terrible disease. But it built it out into something of a much broader community appeal, as well as the sporting piece. And I think we're going to hear a lot more now, Kate. I will give the microphone back to you and hear about this important community piece that is going to be so vital this year, especially.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for all of that, Alan. As always, you're the perfect spokesperson, not only for Canada Running Series events, but also for our communities at large. So thank you for sharing some of that history and tradition. And we definitely want to get to more of that. However, I should bring in our other guests, as you mentioned. So and as we talked about, that longstanding charity partner of this event is the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. This is one of the leading cancer research and treatment organizations in the world. And it's estimated that nearly 50% of Canadians will develop cancer in their lifetimes. And cancer, therefore, really affects all of us, whether directly or indirectly. The Princess Margaret Cancer Centers and Cancer Foundation have a shared vision to conquer cancer in our lifetime. And so, of course, funds raised help to drive world-class cancer research forward and also set new standards of care. And so we're joined today by Keith Clarke, the Director of Corporate and Community Partnerships at the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, to tell us more. Welcome, Keith.
Thanks so much for having me, Kate. Yes, when Alan talks about going back to the 2006, I've been with the foundation since 2010. So I do remember those early days with Larry Rosen and Harry Rosen as the sponsor, and sometimes wearing a parka at some of those races. So when we had talked a few days ago, Kate, I think I've been to probably 8 or 9 of the last 10. So I've seen it all from sunny days of 15 degrees to, I mean, it feels like minus 15. I don't think it actually is, but with the snow and everything, it definitely different each time, which has been fantastic.
I know that I have race photos of myself, I think, running in everything from shorts and a crop top to full tights, long sleeve, gloves, hat. I mean, it just really is the epitome of Toronto spring, right? You can kind of get anything. So, of course, you have this great connection, Keith, to the Spring Runoff. And we had started to talk, Alan had started to talk there about the connection with both Harry and Larry Rosen. And I remember the days when it was Harry's Spring Runoff, and we would have all these folks running around actually participating in the race in like full men's suits, which I always, you know, I thought that was pretty awe-inspiring, to be honest, because most of those materials do not breathe, and some people would be in dress shoes. I mean, it was a great gimmick, but for a great cause. Keith, I want to speak more with you about your role and about the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. But first, I would like to bring in our third guest, Candace, who's been waiting so patiently here. Candace Charles is a longtime runner, but after she was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer in 2017, she decided to participate in her first race, which was the 2018 Spring Runoff. She has participated each year since and has been a top fundraiser multiple times, both as an individual and with her fundraising team, I See a Cure. And we're really appreciative, Candace, that you joined us today. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And you're wearing one of those great race shirts.
I am.
Yes,
I can't remember if this was the second last or the third last, but yeah. This is some of the bling that we receive after venturing up that hill.
Yes, I think a t-shirt is the least that we could possibly get.
It's funny you mention it. And when Alan was saying how fast you can get up the hill, I'm saying in my head, because I'm not an elite runner. I've run for 30 years, but really just for some exercise. I'm thinking in my head, or how slow you can get up the hill. But I did kill the hill ultimately.
Good for you. Yeah, you know what? I find that hill is a real equalizer. It doesn't matter if you're an elite runner or if it's your first time, it's going to destroy you no matter what. So
Thanks.
it's a humbling experience.
That makes me feel a bit better.
Yeah. And what a course for you to choose as your first race. I mean, and again, we'll speak more about the connection specifically between the runoff and your cause, but you couldn't have chosen a much more challenging course.
I had no idea. So ignorance is bliss. It's been an amazing experience, but yeah, that's quite the hill.
Absolutely. Well, Candace, we want to speak a lot more about your journey and your connection and your story. But first, I'd like to bring Keith. Oh, there you go, Keith. I was the first one. We were joking offline who would be the first to mute themselves. I muted myself mid-sentence, so got that out of the way. We want to talk more about the connection between the Spring Runoff and the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. And maybe, Keith, you could start by telling us about your role and what makes you so passionate about doing this work.
Yes, so thank you. So I've been with the foundation since 2010. I'm the Director of Corporate and Community Partnerships, and that's evolved over the years. The Spring Runoff and its different iterations with the sponsors have been within my group's portfolio. So it's something I used to work on directly and have kind of moved within the group. And it's now something that one of my colleagues runs day to day. But really the history from going back to 2010 was Larry Rosen and Harry Rosen being the main sponsors and giving out. I mean, they had swag. They were passing out to everybody that came by the tent. We would be there on site, letting people know that they could make donations there at the time, or if they'd fundraised for us, giving out their prizing that they raised to get the incentives, which has been great. And really, Larry, from that event, came onto our board. So he was on our board, and up until recently, the last year or two, and he did his, I believe it was close to 10 years, and he was, what a phenomenal supporter. He was a big supporter of our docs, big supporter of the race, and really supported us. And it was more of just here's a check and, thank you. It was really being passionate about our cause, being part of us. And that really meant a lot. My own personal connection, been at the foundation for, like I said, 11 years now. And a few years ago, my wife was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. So lucky that I was in the best place in the country, or worked at the best place in the country, and was able to navigate, because I'm on the other side of things all the time. So really, with the type of breast cancer she had, with the developments of funds from races like the Under Armour Spring Run-Off, we don't know if the outcome would have been so good. So we're so happy that we're able to be there. And I mean, seeing it on both sides, I'm raising funds, I'm dealing with patients, but I never had a patient that I had to care for. I was the caregiver for a patient, and I happened to work there. So it really hit home. Always been passionate about cancer and giving back and charity, but that really made it a little bit more extra. So every day I come thinking about her, Princess Margaret, how they were phenomenal, our oncologists, the doctors, the staff. As soon as you step in that door, it's like your family. And there are 2,000 clinic visits a day. And I think if you did a survey, many, if not all of those people would say that they felt like family. It's a extremely scary thing, as I'm sure Candace will be talking about, but you don't think you're going to get cancer. But the reality is half of us will be told those words, you have cancer. Like I mentioned, it doesn't mean that you're going to die from cancer. It just means half of us, half Canadians, will be diagnosed at some point with some form of cancer. Mm-hmm. So all these funds going back from events like the Under Armour Spring Run-Off are vital to creating research techniques within every cancer. And the beauty of this specific run is you can raise money for any area of cancer research that means something to you. And I know Candace will talk about her specific cancer, but it's really, that is the beauty of this event. It really allows you to give back and see immediate impact on the funds you're raising for the specific area of cancer research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for all of that information. It's a really startling statistic, to hear that half of Canadians will be likely diagnosed with some form of cancer within their lifetimes. And I think there's a real understanding that cancer is far too pervasive, but to know that it's 50% means that truly all of us are either directly or indirectly affected. I myself am the daughter of a breast cancer survivor as well, and very fortunately so. But I think that point about it being unique in this way through the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation and the connection to the Under Armour Spring Run-Off, that you can choose your stream, you can choose the department that you want your funds to go to, really does make this unique. As we all know, there's many fundraising events out there. There's always been a connection between sport and fundraising and community engagement, which is wonderful. But often they are very specific. I've done the Run for the Cure for breast cancer many years, but that this is really unique. Do you know why that is? That this was such an important mandate for Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation to make sure that you could have that control over where your donations go?
I think it was twofold. It was one, out of necessity, and prior to myself being there in 2010, it was something that our participants and our fundraisers said, we want to be able to raise money for our area. And what we saw there was people are a lot more passionate about their specific cancer they want to raise money for, as opposed to, I'm just raising money. Now that does work for some people, but I think, as you know, if you have a personal connection, a friend, a neighbor, a colleague, a loved one, you want to raise money for that specific area so nobody has to go through the same type of things that your loved one went through. So it's really, again, the patients, the participants told us this years ago, and it's really been amazing for us to have different people raising money through the same vehicle.
And Keith, you mentioned in our call earlier that, and this was another thing that really shocked me, was that Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation and their cancer centers treat and are working to find a cure for over 200 forms of cancer, which is another really startling statistic. Honestly, I didn't even know there were 200 types of cancer. I'm wondering if you can speak more about sort of that awareness raising piece of this too.
Yes, I think really the 200 areas of cancer research, like I mentioned to you, some people think there's a cure for cancer. There's actually going to be multiple cures for multiple cancers. And there are very rare forms of cancer that aren't always treated, especially in small centers. That's where a lot of our patients do come from, with these rare forms of cancer where they can't go to their local center to be treated. So I think we're lucky because we have some of the best researchers in the world, as well as specific specialists, doctors, nurses that deal with specific areas of cancer research. And a lot of that includes the rarest forms.
In addition to the research and the search for a cure, which of course is always the end goal for this, to eradicate cancer and make sure that we can have better outcomes and things like that, I'm wondering if you can speak a bit more to what else makes Princess Margaret unique, in that it is the leading cancer research center in Canada and one of the top 5 in the world. But you had spoken about a lot more than just the research piece and more maybe the human piece. Can you tell us more about that and what makes it so special?
Yes, I feel that it's almost it becomes a prerequisite when you start at Princess Margaret that the culture is, we're here to help. And whether that's from myself, I actually don't even work in the cancer center, I work in the building beside it. So it's from the minute you walk in there, up until the last few years, everyone, if you've ever been to Princess Margaret, up until the last few years, over the previous 30 years, you would have met Barb Tiano. And Barb was at the front desk, and she knew every single person that walked in that door. Maybe not by first name, but she knew your face. She knew you were coming in. You're probably scared. You don't know what's happening. You're getting a diagnosis or you're going for treatment. It's a scary thing. And like I said, being on both sides of it, coming in and doing my job and going through the hospital, as well as a caregiver with a patient, it's a scary thing. And there's no playbook or handbook on how to deal with everything. And everybody deals with different diagnosis differently. So I really think the human touch, and like I said, it really is a family, developing those relationships with our patients, with the caregivers, whether that be, can you call a cab for me? Or can you tell me where this clinic is? I think the the wayfinding, the staff. No one is, if anyone sees anyone in distress, someone is there to help you. And I think that really speaks to the culture, specifically Princess Margaret, from the top all the way to the bottom. Every single person really is trained to treat each other's like we should be treated, and treat human, and understanding and being empathetic that people are going through a scary time. And I really, that's something that's stuck with me on day one and is still even ever more present now.
Well, Keith, we're definitely grateful and appreciative of the work you do, and the work that everyone at the Princess Margaret Cancer Centers and Cancer Foundation are doing. So thank you for that. Of course, Candace, you've really lived this firsthand. And I think everything that Keith has just spoken to, you and I spoke about, but you're able to approach this in a really personal way. I'm wondering if you could take a couple minutes to share your story with our audience, and then we can chat a little bit more about what your experience has been like with Princess Margaret.
Of course. I was diagnosed with uveal melanoma, also called ocular melanoma, in June of 2017, after having had symptoms for the better part of a year. A doctor finally diagnosed me, and incidentally, this particular doctor happened to have previously worked in the ocular oncology service at Princess Margaret. So very thankfully, I was sent to him. He diagnosed me, and I was seen by Princess Margaret literally the next morning. I saw this doctor. He said, "You will receive a call." And no sooner did I walk in the door, and they called me and said, "Can you come in at 9 a.m.?" So the care has been exceptional. And what's even more surprising almost than receiving a diagnosis for a cancer that you've never heard of and never knew existed is the fact that Princess Margaret Cancer Center, which is fairly close to my home, has an entire department dedicated to ocular oncology. So thank God for that. And I was seen immediately, diagnosed, and treatment happened very quickly. For this particular type of cancer, it's extremely rare. It affects about 5 people in 1 million annually, which is not a lot. And I was treated by radiation for a week to my eye. And that was almost 4 years ago now. Unfortunately, in the interim, I had been well until I just found out in January, this particular cancer, it has a high propensity to spread. So in my case, it has now metastasized to my liver. So over the course of the last almost 4 years, I've been followed extensively by the ocular oncology service, as well as a general medical oncologist, who now I see very regularly for the diagnosis of metastasis. And many things Keith said have hit home, because it really, in a hideous predicament like this, when your prognosis isn't great, there's so much relief. And I can't tell you how encouraging it is to be treated by the doctors at Princess Margaret. These are experts. People from all over Canada come to Princess Margaret Cancer Center to be treated for ocular melanoma. So it's really quite something. And I can't say how thankful I am.
Well, we're certainly very sorry to hear about your diagnoses, Candace, and we wish you the very best of health.
Thank you.
Towards your journey to health, which we're sure you're on. But I think that's something that anyone can relate to, whether they've had a diagnosis or not, is when something scary and unpredictable happens in your life. The thing that most of us want is a sense of assuredness that there's going to be something productive done about it, but also that empathetic piece is so valuable, right?
100%. Yeah, I'm very thankful. I've been lucky. In a really unlucky situation, I've been very lucky.
Candace, maybe, you and I had spoken a little bit before the call about some of the other empathy building pieces and some of maybe the more mental, emotional contributions that your experience with Princess Margaret Cancer Centers had. Can you fill us in on what some of those are? Because I think that's the piece that maybe doesn't get talked about as much. We're always talking about the cure, but again, that human piece is really important.
You're right. So something that a lot of people may or may not know is, along with a cancer diagnosis comes a tremendous amount of fear. It's completely normal. Just an incredible amount of fear, anxiety, and frankly, depression. is very common. So after initial diagnosis, once it had set in for me, I realized after, I think it was maybe 4 months later or even 6 months later, I was back at work, but I just was having a lot of trouble dealing with it. And I made an appointment to speak to my ocular oncologist, who is amazing. And he referred me to the psychosocial oncology department at Princess Margaret. So just as I had no idea that there was an entire department dedicated to ocular oncology, there is an entire department of people, doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, dedicated to helping people through their cancer diagnosis. And they actually are available for caregivers and family members as well, which is incredible. It was really helpful to me. I did use that service on my initial diagnosis. I likely will have to use it again. They were very helpful, really helpful. They offer a myriad of things, from talk therapy and psychosocial oncology services. There are yoga classes, just almost everything that you could possibly think of, meditation classes. It is an amazing, amazing cancer center. So if you're going to be diagnosed with cancer, as it is, which, trust me, it's very hideous, Princess Margaret has really made it as good as it can be.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, we're very grateful that those resources are available, and it's
too.
listed, right? I'm sure it's clearly such a mandate of Princess Margaret that there's an attention paid to the whole well-being of the patient, and that
That's
patient
true.
care piece, in addition to just the medical side, which I'm sure is very challenging on its own. Candace, I have to ask, because on the topic of overall well-being, you were a runner for many years before this diagnosis, but you said you had never raced before. So let us know about that connection now to the spring runoff, because here you are with this scary experience, but you've also taken on a new challenge of racing for the first time.
So yeah, and it was really exciting. What happened was, I believe I was following on Facebook. It was either the Canada Running Series or Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. And I came across a post where it said, raise money for Princess Margaret, which I thought, oh my gosh, what a way to give back, because there's not much I can do other than something like this. And it was the spring runoff. And I think the first couple times I did the 8K, and I remember looking at it and thinking, oh, 8K, no problem. That's my regular workout, until I got there and got to those hills. But that's another story. It was still fun, and it's a beautiful run. But I saw the post and I immediately thought, okay, the running should be no problem. I've never raced in my life. And I'll admit, I'm not a racer. I'm not an elite runner. I did the run. It was fun and wonderful. I don't even remember my time. But my main goal was to try to fundraise, which I also hadn't done before. And frankly, it was made very easy. And it was such a great experience. I started the first year after diagnosis. So it would have been 2018 would have been my first race. I like to call it a run, because if I call it a race, yeah. I ran. And then the second year, I think that's when I had various family members and friends saying, you can do a team, we can do this with you. So I aptly named our team I See a Cure, and this is our third year participating.
That's wonderful. And I is spelled EYE as in I.
Right.
That's clever.
EYE, See a Cure, because there's really once the uveal melanoma spreads, which it tends to do in about 50% of cases, which is quite high. I hate to say it's a death sentence, but there's no real standard of care. There is no protocol. There are various drugs that they can try. It may work for a short time, but it's really not a great prognosis. So that's why we're so desperate for research for this particular type of cancer. So just to get back to my first year participating, when I was entering and picking where the funds should be allocated, I was frankly surprised to see ocular oncology research. I was happy. I thought I'd have to pick something else, but my department was there. So it was really amazing and a great experience.
Yeah, such a great reminder that there is such a vital need for these funds to go to these specific,
Yeah,
especially the
yeah,
rare cancers, because as we mentioned, I mean, there's no limit to the number of fundraising dollars that could go to all types of cancers. We always need more. But when you have a real
Yeah.
focus on some of the more well-known ones, I think it sounds like some rarer forms could be left behind a little bit. And I mean,
and
it's very
yeah.
clear how vital that is right now.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
it's a great partnership, and I'm happy that I came across it and have been able to participate because it's been an amazing experience.
Oh, we're so glad too. And of course, as you mentioned, you spent a couple years as an individual running and fundraising, and now you have your team. And
Yeah,
that's a good reminder to our audience that you can participate as an individual fundraiser or on a team up to
yeah.
12 people. And we will share some links as well about how folks can do that through our social media. But Candace, one of the things you said there that has been a theme throughout our Runners High discussions is that in this era of virtual running, it can sometimes be hard for folks to find a real sense of motivation to get out the door and participate in a virtual run because virtual races are wonderful. They provide so much, but they're not the same as the community feeling that you get with thousands of other people running through High Park together. And you said that the first time you were really motivated to do a run or a race was as a result of this diagnosis and the need to fundraise. And so I think that's an important thing for our audience to keep in mind as they're embarking on some of these virtual events, is that they can choose to run for something much bigger than themselves. And that in itself can create a real sense of purpose. I'm wondering if you could share with us some of maybe the emotions or what went through your head and your heart while you were doing these runs, knowing that they were so closely connected to, such a personal cause.
It has been an amazing experience. The first couple of years were at High Park. It's exciting. Of course, you're surrounded by a couple thousand people, I think. It's very, very exciting. Remember, I'm not an elite runner, so I could do without those hills. So the virtual race works really well for me. It depends what your motivation is. Yeah, it's exciting when you do it as a group, but I am, I guess, a late joiner. I only started participating after diagnosis, so 4 years ago. And yes, running in the park was fantastic. And it really was meaningful to push me up those hills because there's not just that one awful Uber hill. There are a couple of places where it was like, whoo, I've been running for 30 years and I've never been winded like this. I'm thinking in my head, every step I'm taking, okay, this is helping my doctors. This could potentially be helping me. Doing the virtual run last year, it was a lot of fun. It was so much more relaxing. And yes, of course, I remember why I'm doing it. But on the flat surfaces that are in my neighborhood, it was a welcome change. Yeah, you just sometimes have to use your imagination to get yourself motivated. It didn't take a lot of imagination for me.
Right.
High Park's a tough race, although beautiful and fun. This is a good change for a bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe next year I'll be back in High Park and that will be great, but a couple years off is a good break for me.
That's a great point. I think, and we are all hoping, of course, that the spring runoff will be back in High Park next year. But at least at that point, we'll have the masses to help with the momentum up those hills. And maybe we can choose a slightly less challenging course on our own over the course of April. Candace, you said that not only was participating in a race like this new, but so was fundraising. You said you hadn't really fundraised in a major way before.
Never.
I'm wondering, for folks who are maybe inspired by your story or by stories in their own life and want to take on the challenge of fundraising for the first time this year through the Under Armour Spring Run-Off, do you have any tips about how to get started fundraising and how to be really successful through it?
So I had no idea what I was doing when I signed up. I signed up for the actual race, not realizing that fundraising, the link would be sent at a later time. It may have been the next day. And I did it and they provide tips. I had no idea what I was doing. I read through the tips and I did what was suggested. I approached everybody I knew. What's the worst thing someone will say? And speaking to what Keith had said earlier, there are so many types of cancer that people have a connection to. There's nothing, because this is particularly for ocular melanoma research, I can totally understand if someone doesn't want to support that and they have something else that they support at Princess Margaret. But I was shocked, and I still am 4 years later, at the generosity of people who are taking on this cause. It is amazing. So even though I know, and I didn't at the time, but during fundraising, I've learned of tons of friends who have partners and family members who are unfortunately going through a cancer diagnosis and in this same situation with various types of cancer. They're still very willing to support cancer research in any way possible. And it's been an amazing experience. People have been incredibly generous. It's really heartwarming. It is amazing.
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear. And I know one of the other messages that you had said was really important was that no amount is too small. And I think that's a great reminder too, even in an era when maybe COVID has caused some financial constraints for some folks.
Right.
Any contribution not only helps with this cause, but can also make you feel more personally connected through your run to this.
100%. It's so true. Sometimes people think, and my donation amounts have become smaller too as a result of COVID and work, but you know, if you have $20 to give or $50 or alternatively 500, but you think you should be giving 10,000, it just, every amount makes a difference. I had a friend who's actually a fellow patient a couple years ago who shared my fundraising link. This was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And he said, if all my friends just chip in and give $5 to this cause for Princess Margaret, you know, it goes to ocular oncology where he and I are treated. And they did. I had completely strangers, names I've never seen before. And it's so kind. No amount is too small. Really, we're desperate for research for this type of cancer. Hopefully to find some kind of cure in our lifetime, or something at least that renders it a livable condition.
Right.
So no amount is too small. Yeah, it's never too small, whatever difference you can make. Volunteer, donate any amount, join the team, run with us, just anything. Yeah, no amount is too small. If you have the willingness and you're in a position where you can help in any way, I think it's a responsibility to try and help.
Absolutely. And again, we'll make sure that we share both Candace's personal fundraising page as well as the I See a Cure fundraising page.
Thank you.
It really is. Every drop in the ocean matters, right? And if everyone were able to just do a little bit, it would make a huge difference.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And so on that note, again, registration is now open and the early bird pricing is in effect, but only until the end of today. So if you are looking to register for the Under Armour Spring Run-Off, registration fees do go up tomorrow, April 1st. So I would highly suggest that if you're listening to this live, head to your computer right now, hit that registration button. The Thaw Out 13, which is new this year, it is the combination of the 8K and the 5K, is already sold out. So that was a popular one. But you can still register for the 5K, the 8K, and the kids run. And then, of course, you can set up the line of command here is you set up your fundraising page and share it widely with your friends and family. You can run your race anytime between April 1st and April 30th and collect pledges along the way. And there are some really great fundraising incentives actually set out both by Under Armour and by the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation this year. So if you raise more than $250 as an individual before April 30th, Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation will generously reimburse your registration fee. In addition to that, the top fundraising individual this year will receive a $450 Under Armour gift card, as well as free entry into the 2021 Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon, which is coming up sooner than we think. And the top fundraising team this year will also receive a $150 Under Armour gift card for each member, up to 12 members. As well, keep in mind, there will be tax receipts issued for donations of $15 or more. Keith, did I cover it all?
You've covered it all, Kate. Thank you. And Candace, maybe we need to connect to get you on our next commercial.
I'm game. I'm game.
Thank you.
Great connections happening through Runners High. I love it. Well, of course, as we all head into the start of this great event tomorrow, this virtual event, I'm wanting to bring Mr. Alan Brookes back in here because he is our pump up guy. He's the one who's going to get us all excited to get out there and registered for your 5K, 8K, or kids race. Alan, you touched on a number of the different elements of this race that have been that have made it such a great tradition, but have also evolved over the years. And I'm wondering if maybe you can share some final words of advice for our audience as we head out for our races.
Well, I think I'd just like to pick up on something you mentioned, Kate, that we're all looking for motivation and something to give us that extra sense of purpose, get us out the door. And that is one of the interesting takeaways that we've discovered over the last year with the pandemic, that normally maybe 20% of our runners run for a cause, to raise funds for a charity, and with the virtual races, it's been much closer to 30 or 35%. So it is a real factor, and I think it gives that extra sense of purpose. Candace is so motivational for us. Thank you for sharing your story, Candace. It's just, again, everything that the Spring Run-Off, as well as Princess Margaret, is about courage and strength and resilience. So we hope you find a nice flat course this year to enjoy your Spring Run-Off.
Thank you.
And I guess a shout out to Princess Margaret, but also to Under Armour. We talked about how Harry Rosen sponsored the race for 10 years, Larry and Harry and their whole team. And it really brought it into the modern era, the things that happened during that time. But now, you know, more than ever, we need to come together and support each other. And Under Armour has stepped into the title sponsorship in a time where we don't have a real race, but they have 100% stood by us, and everyone's going to have their great Under Armour t-shirt this year. They're going to have a wonderful finisher's medal and lots of other swag from our other partners. And I think that underscores, it really takes all of us. And I really love Candace's comment that that's so much what running's about. It's about keeping it simple, putting one foot in front of another. And if we all do that together, we all put in our $5 or our $20 or whatever we can give, it's just phenomenal what we can achieve together. We're so much stronger together. So I think we only have about 400 places left, Kate, for people to sign up today. That's not a joke. It's real. 400 places left.
And they'll go fast.
And as you said, you can do the race anytime in the month of April, do your own race on your own course. But we have this tradition of, you know, world-class athletes, people like world record holders, Daniel Coleman, Sammy Kipketer, and we've had some great Canadian stars. And I just want to let everybody know, for extra inspiration, the weekend of the 17th and 18th of April, we're having an elite challenge. And we've invited a bunch of our top Canadian elite athletes. Already some of our past champions have confirmed, Olympians like Dana Pitarewski, who finished first at our Olympic trials at the Scotia Toronto Waterfront Marathon in 2019, and will be on her way to Tokyo for the Olympic Marathon this year. She's running. Natasha Wodak has already got the standard in both the marathon and the 10,000. People will be able to tune into our social media that weekend and see the times that are posted, our social media guru, Kelly, will be posting videos and photos to give an extra sense of race weekend. And Candace, you're exempt from this. Please know you're exempt from this. But I have to say, people now, they need to listen to some bagpipe music to get really pumped. Scotland the Brave or something like that. And think of Piper McGonigal taking Dave Reed and I to the start line. And then you've got to go out and plan your course, whether you're doing the 5K, the 8K, or all of it, and find a course with a couple of good, tough hills. You don't have to bath at the top, but that's acceptable. And then, of course, you get ready anytime, maybe that race weekend, the 17th and 18th, to join the elites. But any time in the month, you go do that. And then think all the way around of Princess Margaret and the cause that you're raising money for. But also, Kate, that wonderful pancake breakfast afterwards that you're going to stuff yourself with pancakes for the High Park Nature Center and beautiful fresh Canadian maple syrup from Madawaska Farms, maybe. Tom has been part of our operations crew for many years, Tom Taylor, and he actually has a sugar bush now. And the prizes we've been giving out, the maple syrup, the last few years are from Tom's sugar bush. But think of that, the cause and the pancakes, and then maybe some more bagpipe music.
Sounds like a great combination. What a good kickoff to spring. Run some hills, eat some pancakes, listen to some bagpipe music, and raise some funds for a great cause. Well, those are good fighting words, Alan. We really appreciate it. And of course, we'll all look forward to hopefully this time next year when we can all be in person again. But until then, sign up, get those registrations in today, be one of those 400 spots before pricing goes up tomorrow. And then you can complete your Under Armour virtual race anytime throughout the month of April. Again, we will share some links for Candace's pages. Her team's reminder is that research is very desperately needed to stop uveal melanoma metastasis from becoming a death sentence and convert it into a livable condition. And wouldn't it be great if we could do that for everything? So please consider supporting her efforts or any other fundraising efforts. Keith, I believe the fundraising goal this year is $40,000 and we're well on our way, but we're going to make sure throughout the month of April that we surpass that, I think, this year through our virtual races.
Agreed. We're going to blow it out of the water.
Absolutely. Well, we really want to thank you all, Candace, Keith, and Alan, so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We wish you all the best in your running, your health, and your fundraising efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good luck, Candace and Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just a final reminder that in addition to the Under Armour Spring Run-Off, registration is now open also for the Banque Scotia 21 km de Montréal and the Scotiabank Vancouver Half Marathon virtual races. Head on over to CanadaRunningseries.com to find out what you get with registering, to start your training today, and to check out some of that great Under Armour swag that Alan was mentioning for the Spring Run-Off. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Runners High. You can join us again in 2 weeks for another episode. And until then, stay safe and run strong.